everyone, and welcome to another talk with the Nine-Sided Circle. I'm one of your two hosts, Nor Kyle, along with
the other one of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali.
So thank you for joining us. We have a number of people joining us live, lots of familiar faces, and it's always nice to have those folks here because they get to enrich our experience in our conversation. And you guys who are watching on YouTube get to partake and participate watching with us, and you can also join us in the comments if you want to have a conversation or ask questions and give us feedback and all of that stuff. There we go. Zainab's here too. Yeah, Mushtaq, help me with the spiel.
Okay, the spiel. If you are watching this on YouTube, and you undoubtedly are, because otherwise you're already here and you don't need to hear this, let me say to you, welcome. Thanks for being here. And we would be ever so grateful to you if you would take a moment to subscribe to our channel. And this is important because now YouTube is forcing advertising on everybody. We have tried to keep our channel demonetized, but they've just decided we have the right to advertise on anybody's channel, but you don't get anything from it. So we are working very hard to get up to 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours of listening so that we can become affiliates with YouTube and then turn off all of the monetization to each video one by one manually if we have to, because we don't want you subjected to some of these incredibly gross ads that show up now on our videos. And we apologize to you for that. This is not our intention to spam you with ads. We don't want your money from ads. We don't want money from your attention being drawn to these ads. We would rather just have you be able to listen to what we say or go, oh, they're crazy, and turn it off. So if you would consider hitting the subscribe button and also hitting the like button, because that gets us up in the algorithm. The more likes we get, the more YouTube puts us out there, and then we can get to the 1,000 subscribers quicker and turn off all the damn ads. And leave us a comment. Tell us who you are. Tell us why you're here. Tell us what you would like us to talk about. Tell us that we're completely nuts. It's all okay. We don't care.
Yeah, we've had some really amazing comments from people who are just sharing about themselves. You know, it's the internet, you got to be careful, but just enough info to let us know how we can support you in your path to human adulthood and waking up and all that stuff. That's really useful to us, and I think it makes for a great conversation, and people get to read those conversations and learn from them as well. We've heard from folks who have benefited from us having our comment dialogues in that way too. So thank you to everyone who has been participating in that way. And of course, you know, if you're not feeling what we have to offer, you can, like Mushtaq said, you can click away and go somewhere else. You can give us a thumbs down if that's your honest feedback.
If you hate us, hit the hate button.
Right.
We don't mind.
Good. We appreciate any and all feedback as long as it's honest. I think that helps a lot. So I think that brings us to, well, first of all, we mentioned this previously too, but Mushtaq and I each have one spot open for private one-on-one consultations as well. So let's keep that in mind. That door is open.
And the link is down below. Send us an email.
Yep. All right, so what are we talking about today? We are talking about do or not do. This is like, you know, we're going to get deeper into this, but we're going to be talking about this from the Sufis' perspective specifically.
Yeah, the Daoists have pretty much have cornered the market on the not doing, but we have been involved in not doing stuff for a long time ourselves, and I think that everybody can benefit from more than one perspective. So we're going to not give you a perspective.
We're going to not give a perspective?
Yeah, it's the not doing. We're going to not do the giving of a perspective.
Gotcha. All right. So
Yeah.
this topic came up to me this week when I was thinking about, just this idea or this inkling I had that we are often, let's say we're trying to solve a problem. And some problems require us to take action. They require us to take some kind of intentional initiative. Other problems can be resolved by us taking the opportunity to allow what is already in motion to happen. And this is another way of thinking about doing and not doing. And for me, I know that I have, a fixation that pivots me often towards anxiety. I do type 4. And when I have a problem that requires some kind of resolution, sometimes my anxiety stems from the fact that I can't discern immediately whether it's a problem that requires me to take action or to surrender to the circumstances, having already done all that I can do. And I noticed you unmuted yourself, Levita. Did you have a thought you wanted to share? Nope. Cool. So yeah, Mushtaq and I decided to run with this topic, and that's how we ended up on this do or do not thing today.
We actually walked slowly with the topic. We would have liked to have been running, but after a year of hardly moving at all, it's walking slowly.
Yeah. All right, so feel free to take it from there, and I have plenty more to say, but
okay.
Mushtaq has some interesting thoughts as well.
I do?
You do?
Oh, yes, I do. Yes. I have very interesting thoughts, and I am going to tell them to you now. So, a Sufi might say that there are two arcs or two intentions. There is the intention of action and the intention of surrender. And it is incumbent upon you to know when each one of these is most appropriate. So the intention of action is related to the first conscious shock in the octave, as it were, to use Gurdjieffian terms. It's that mi-fa shock. And the intention to surrender is the second conscious shock, the si-do shock. So when you're dealing with something, you got to ask yourself, what is appropriate here? Must I act or must I surrender to the moment? And surrendering to the moment doesn't mean giving up. I'm going to steal from Adyashanti yet again, because so far he said it better than anybody else I know. You allow everything to be as it already is. That is true surrender. It's like, oh, everything is as it is. And you let that come to fruition. It's always going to be one of these two along this arc. And the discernment to know which is most appropriate is a fine skill to have. Wouldn't you say, Noor?
Yeah, and I would also say that in any given process, anything we're trying to achieve or complete, follow through on, resolve, we are going to have to utilize both of these types of action. And we will find that they flow into one another. And I think this is important to think about, because we will find, let's say, we have entered into a situation where resolution, at least in the immediate sense, resides in doing something proactive, doing something where it's like, okay, I need to go to the post office and I need to put this in the mailbox today, or this bill is it's not going to pan out and I'm going to end up being overcharged with fees because I didn't pay a bill in time, whatever it is. So you go to the post office, you put this in the mailbox. At that point, you have to surrender to the process of that mail getting delivered. And you can see that as, like I said, one thing is flowing into the next. And at a point where you find yourself needing to surrender, at some point, the ball will return back to your court, and it will be time for you to be proactive again, to take action in a more literal way.
And within a longer process, you might cycle through these two states more than once.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You might do what you can do, then you have to wait. Once you've waited the appropriate amount of time, you might have to do something else and then surrender to the process again. This can cycle 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times in a big process. Who knows? But knowing when to do what is incredibly important. So that gets us to the question of the day, which is, how do you know when to do what? Don't everybody answer at once.
Yeah, so what are some, we'll get deeper into this, but as we go forward, I would love some input from you guys. Like, let's say you have a problem in front of you to resolve. How can you tell? What are some cues for you that indicate to you whether it's a problem that might best be resolved in this moment by intention to act or intention to surrender? What do you guys think? Jonathan?
Yeah, my question is with this word surrender. To me, that means a giving up of something.
Interesting, yeah.
And I would have to try and identify what it is I need to give up to solve my issue.
Yeah, and that's the problem, because that's not how we're using the word.
Well, I think it would be good to explain what we mean by these words, because I think within the Sufi context, there's kind of a soup that we're swimming in. So it'd be good to clarify that for everyone.
Yep. So if we say if we were to say intention to surrender in Arabic, it would come out something along the lines of niyat, which means intention, al ayistis Islam, ayist Islam. Now you notice the word Islam there. Islam is a very interesting word. It comes from the root salama, which is the trilateral root, which gives us the word salam, or peace. Islam is usually translated as surrender or submission, but it can also equally be translated as allowing oneself to be at peace. And in this sense, it is not giving something up. As I said, it is allowing everything to be as it already is. Allowing allowing the process to take the shape that it is naturally taking without trying to force anything. So here's an example. You go in to your kitchen and you're going to cook oatmeal. And in order to do that, you have to boil the water. So you put the water in the pot, You put the pot on the stove, you turn the fire on under the stove, and then you sit there or stand there and glare at the pot and will it to boil. Demand that it boil, yell at it, trying to get it to boil. Boil, you damn pot, boil. And none of that does any good. As a matter of fact, your blood pressure's gone up, you've gotten tired, you've worn yourself out, and the water is just doing what it's going to do. So surrender in this case doesn't mean give up anything. It just means allow the pot to boil in the natural way that it will do it. You've done your due diligence. You have filled the pot with water, you've put the water on the stove, you've turned the fire on, and now you step away and allow the pot to do its thing. That's what we mean by surrender, not giving anything up. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah.
So it's like a relinquishing of control.
Sort of, or relinquishing the illusion of control, because you have no control at that point anyway.
I mean, another example that comes to my mind is, at least generally speaking, puberty. We can't will puberty to happen. It happens in its own time. And
we can't will it to get over either.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So you just you do have to sit tight through that process and be at peace with how it unfolds on its own.
Is it necessarily a passive process?
I don't see it as a passive process at all. I see it as you are actively not doing.
Yeah. Yep.
Well,
I mean, go ahead, Nancy.
okay, well, actually, a couple things. One is that we now have some choices about puberty because there are hormonal
Right.
choices.
Which is why, there are some caveats there, but I think for general purposes, and as most of us have experienced it personally, puberty has been one of those things that we have had to surrender to, in the sense of letting it be as it already is. Is that fair enough?
Oh, yeah. But the more major thing is there are some areas where we have quite a bit of knowledge. For example, that the pot of water takes as long as it takes to boil.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you're dealing with a person, it may be less obvious. Would they cooperate if you just sort of leave them in peace? Or do you need to push?
What is it? The answer is always going to be, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? And do you have the right to do anything?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can think of a case where I was waiting for somebody to get in touch with me and I didn't know whether I should prod them again. And, I just waited for a few more days and they got in touch, but I really didn't have information. And I could have said, hey, what's up? Which would not have been unreasonable.
We were talking about that yesterday, right about at the bridge, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking about it in the context of job applications, or having submitted a manuscript for publication and waiting to hear back. And I think one of the things we discussed was that, you through the intention to action, you submit whatever it is, your application, you do the prep for an interview, whatever it is, or you get your manuscript ready, it's all edited, good to go, to someone who will approve or disapprove it for the next steps. And so you've handed it off to them, at which point you are moving into the mode of the intention to surrender. And then, for whatever is the typical amount of time or the appropriate amount of time, or whatever makes sense within that particular context. Like for a manuscript, that might be a couple weeks or more. For a job application, it might be a couple weeks or more, it might be a couple days, but in any case, you give a few days at least of space of allowing the other person to get around to handling the materials that you passed on. And yeah, at that point, there is a sense that you kind of have to gauge in a respectful way whether it's time to move back into the mode of intention to action, and perhaps reach out to them, be like, hey, I just wanted to make sure everything's okay on your end. Did you get the opportunity to look at my manuscript or my application or whatever it is?
And that is part of your due diligence.
Yeah.
So if I'm
Yes.
sending out, if somebody is going to call me on the phone, I say, oh, okay, when can I expect your call back?
Mm-hmm.
And if they say, oh, I don't know, then I'm not going to worry about it. If they say in a week and a week and a half goes by, then I'm in a position where I can take action again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's perhaps part of your due diligence to set timelines for these things, if you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because again, this is one of those things where if we perhaps push too much, if we don't allow that breathing room, that time to dwell in the mode of surrender, we may overstep our bounds, so to speak. Like if
Yeah,
we're
alienate our
Yeah,
friends,
exactly.
become stalkers.
Yeah. Yep. And of course, if we allow months to go by without following up, then that's also unfortunate as well. So yeah, we do have to use our personal discernment. Yep. And yeah, I mean, another thing we discussed is that sometimes things are very individual. Like perhaps a person may not have the resources to move through the mode of intention to action at this time. There are many cases in which that is the case. And sometimes we need to move between modes in our own rhythm rather than as someone else's rhythm. Words. I'm trying to think of an example of that, Mushtaq.
Let me think about that. I bet you come up with an example before I do.
Well, I have a particular one in mind.
Go for it.
It's a personal one. So for me personally, I know a lot of people who have been staying home a lot during this pandemic. Like me, they've kind of had a bit of muscle atrophy going on. Maybe they have a few more aches and pains than they did 12 months ago. That's real for me because I do have a connective tissue disorder. And I've noticed over the past year, not only have I been kind of an extreme homebody who hasn't been moving around a lot, but I've noticed that my condition, as it naturally has and will, has been progressing a little bit. So for me personally, there are two things at play here. First of all, the intention to surrender must come into play for me because I need to be able to accept that my body is going to do what it's going to do to a certain extent. If my condition is going to progress, and it will, it's best for me to be at peace with that. At the very same time, gaining the strength back that I've lost during staying at home for the past year is within my power to remedy. That is in the realm of intention to act for me. So I can hold both of those things at the very same time and live in both of those modes at the same time if I deal with two different but still interrelated issues that are of immediate concern to me.
I think that that's an excellent example.
Yeah. And like I said, there will be interplay between them in that sometimes my ability to take action will be limited by my disability. And that's why the idea of one thing flowing into the next is so important here, because there is this fluidity. And having the grace to understand that both of these modes are taking place has made this easier for me to cope with at large. Does that make sense so far? Yeah.
One thing I was wondering about was, supposing your discernment isn't good enough and you're doing the wrong one, how can you get a warning that you're heading in the wrong direction?
Yeah.
The reaction that you get will be fairly telling most of the time. When you get it right, things tend to feel like they're going really smoothly. When you get it wrong, much effort is involved. And that's what I use. You know, it's like if I get it wrong and I go, oh, I need to do the intention of surrender here, and I have not finished doing my due diligence, all of a sudden, a mile down the road, something starts flapping, right? It's like, oh, that fell off. I guess I forgot to tighten that down.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me personally, I mentioned anxiety earlier. I get trapped. I noticed a pattern of getting all wrapped up in shoulds, for example. So oftentimes when I experience that, I think it's when I'm either ignoring something that needs to be done, like I'm putting it off, but I think that tends to be more of like a willful looking away feeling, whereas the tyranny of the shoulds tends to happen when I'm in a place where I could probably benefit from surrendering to the situation, but I feel like, what about this? What about that? I just need to let those things go, tune into that feeling and recognize it as a signal that I'm wanting to push when perhaps I need to just let go. And yeah, these things may be a little bit unique to everyone, but I think this is why it takes recognizing this pattern, first of all. That allows you the opportunity to explore what these signals for you personally might be. Because you won't recognize them if you're not looking for them. Jonathan, I noticed you were unmuted a few minutes ago. Did you have something you wanted to share?
Only that this world we live in is oriented to me, it seems to me it's oriented towards doing, taking action.
It is,
And
yeah.
this is something completely opposite to that and unfamiliar to our conditioning.
Yeah, I would
It
say
seems very difficult.
the world is not in fact oriented to this. Your culture is oriented to this.
Yeah.
The world is perfectly happy with you being completely in a state of not doing when appropriate.
Yeah.
I mean, entire philosophies have been about this. I put the Chinese symbol on our slide for the video, and it says wei wu wei. Wu wei means not doing. This is the doing of not doing. It's, you know, classic Daoist thought. And they actually, I would say that Sufis are duffers on this, and these guys are like the utter experts when you get to the Daoists of doing through not doing. But we steal from them whenever we can.
Yeah.
And so don't think, I love that, don't think that this is something that is inherent in the world. Think that this is one of the traps of your culture, that you have been told by somebody somewhere that you're only valid if you're doing.
That's a huge thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I mean by the tyranny of the shoulds, this idea that, like, if you're not actively producing at any given moment, then you failed somehow. That's absolutely conditioning. Yeah, when you said the world, and Mushtaq clarified that to culture, I'm glad you made that distinction, because when I heard the world, I was thinking culture, but I think that nuance is important here.
Yeah. There's a great Robert Heinlein short story that ended up in one of his books, perhaps Time Enough for Love, about the man too lazy to fail, which is a classic example of doing through not doing. Highly recommended if you can find it.
Yeah.
And Nancy would probably know if it's in any collections besides that one, or if it's even in that one and not some other one. Your mic is off.
I think it was in Time Enough for Love. I was just going to check.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I know that it has appeared in some other anthology or another, but that's where I first ran across it. And it had a positive effect on my mind when I first read it. It's like, I want to be like this guy.
I have not read that one. I definitely need to check it out. So do we have any other thoughts or questions so far? What do you think, Zainab? What's coming up for you?
The point that you mentioned to look for the surrender moment.
Mm-hmm.
I've realized the body, the mind, whatever is trying to escape that moment. So if I can notice that my attention is escaping or doesn't want to go into that, it's the point that I would have to catch myself. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And thanks, Nancy. Nancy says that it is in Time Enough for Love, and she hasn't seen it collected anywhere else.
Good. Maybe we can dig it up from the vault.
Yep.
Thanks, Zainab. Yeah. How about you, Mr. Keem? Are you driving right now, or you got an opportunity to share your thoughts? I'll give him a moment. I'm gonna make sure he's not texting and driving. Do and not do in the same time, that I was thinking. Yeah, I mean, with different things, we are going to be at different points in those processes. So like I was saying, I kind of have these interplaying processes between acceptance of my, congenital disorder thing. And I also have this need to make sure I'm taking care of my body at the very same time. And there is overlap, or there is interplay between these two things. And yet, you know, it's sort of like they require me to move through these modes at different paces within each of these two processes. And perhaps, you know, like, let's say you're working and you're going to school. There will be things at work that require you to be either in intention to action mode or intention to surrender mode. At the same time, you'll have things in your schoolwork that are requiring you to either be in intention to action mode or intention to surrender mode. And same thing with your home life as well, perhaps. So, as with any process, these things are always going on and progressing simultaneously. What are you thinking, Omar?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this kind of an issue comes up most clearly. Maybe it's because I've kind of retired. I'm not, but it comes up most clearly in two situations, actually.
Sure.
One is when I'm trying to master something, and there's this initial phase where I have to intentionally act and practice and do all this sort of shit. And I'm doing that normally from a sort of position of a personality, of a particular identity. You know, I'm the student of tango or karate, whatever, you know. And then there comes a point, and it's not a cliff. I mean, I come back and forth, but there comes a point where I had to kind of give up on this intentional practice, intentional action, and in a sense, allow it to flow. Okay, and that's in something like a skill like that. It seems to come and go. I mean, I get one part of it, and I don't get another part of it, and so forth. But the other place where this comes up almost radically is in meditative practice.
Oh yeah.
There's at first that sort of intentional concentration of the mind, right? You know, whereas definitely I'm the student and I'm going to control the mind and it's not going to drift around and so forth. And then eventually comes this point where that also relaxes, you know. And the clearest example probably is doing a Zen koan. You know, here you are, you're battling this, trying to figure this damn thing out and so forth, until at some point you kind of, in Jonathan says, maybe almost give up, you know. I mean, you realize that there is nothing you can do to really resolve that conundrum. And it's in that giving up process that something reveals itself. You know? So, and what reveals itself is something independent of any particular personal identity, in a sense. You know, I'm no longer, you know, being a good student trying to resolve this issue, or, you know, being the good meditator and trying to, you know, get the really proper meditative posture, etc., etc. That kind of drops off, you know. So in those cases, it's fairly clear. I mean, it's almost like the transition is forced on me, you know. I'm not having to look for, you know, what's the clue to when I should be intentionally acting as opposed to just letting it flow. In the kind of examples you were raising, I think there is the issue of, you know, what do I look for to tell me that, you know, I'm pushing too much and I should be just letting things be. It's less clear in those situations for me, at least. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's interesting that you discussed like this pushing of personality, you know, to do this efforting and all that. I think that is definitely one way we can look at it. In another way, I think this specific kind of intention to action I personally had in mind is also kind of coming from that meditative place. It's funny because there is this surrender that can happen we're using that same word, you know, there's the intention to surrender and the intention to action, but there's kind of a surrender in both of them. If we're coming from a place of essence, when we're acting from that place in either one of these modes, there is surrender in that. And I know that probably comes across as sort of confusing because, oh, I thought like surrender was a specific mode. And I understand that. Here, I mean, the efforting here, the action here doesn't necessarily have to come from this place of pushing and ego, and then you hit a wall where you're like, okay, now I know to sit still and relax into this. It's kind of like, you know, there's a time for work, there's a time for play, there's a time for this, there's a time for that. And it's very natural to move from one mode to the next. I'm not sure if I'm saying this very clearly. Are you following me, Mushtaq?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would welcome you rephrasing in your own words if you'd like to.
You would you?
I would.
Well, darn, let me see. I think that you said it really good. I wouldn't change anything about what you said.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is kind of like a manifestation of human adulthood in the sense that your action in this particular case is not meant to come from that egoic drive place where you need to produce, you need to get this done. It's more like, here's what needs to happen now in order for this process to flow fluidly to resolution. We all need to eat, sleep, breathe, all that stuff. It's kind of that sort of vibe rather than it being like, I need to get this PhD in order to prove that I don't suck at life. It's more visceral, I suppose.
So no, do I understand you correctly? It sounds to me like what you're saying is that even in the intentional action phase, there's a certain surrender, and that surrender is to recognizing what the appropriate action is in this particular
Absolutely.
situation. Would that
Yes.
be correct? Okay.
Yeah.
And that I
following.
certainly agree with. You know, that I certainly agree with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad that came across. Thanks for explaining it in your own words. Jonathan, I saw you unmuted. Did you have a thought?
Yeah, if the intention intention of action is not coming from the ego itself,
Right.
then where is the intention coming from?
An excellent question. Where is the intention coming from, Noor?
Well, I mean, we can think of the ego as kind of this like protective shell, right? And the essence sort of thrives within that shell. So the intentionality I'm talking about here, you know, when you've reached this kind of, you've worked through all your shit, you're heading towards human adulthood, you're on the precipice of living from essence rather than ego. So ideally, when I think of intention in this case, I'm thinking of something deeper than just all those mechanistic things that motivate us when we're trying to achieve things in that grasping sort of way.
It's kind of the difference between, I want this, and for this to happen, these situations must be met.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this is a really nuanced thing to talk about. So it may take some chewing on before it kind of melts together into something you can bite into and take home with you. So I appreciate your question though. And yeah. I just think we are kind of, I mean, I'm seeing it even between us talking here now, like this idea that action has to come from this place of grasping and like expectations put upon you by the culture that we live in. I mean, this is tough stuff.
Yeah, this is why we like you to be doing physical things that require getting beyond the egoic stuff. You know, when I fence, it is often the case that my arm just extends at the right moment. I'm not thinking about it. The action happens. And that, I think, is the highest level of intention to action. My intention when I'm fencing is to stab the other guy. And it doesn't get any more complex than that. So if it's no more complex than that, then whatever I need to do to achieve that intention gets done. And when I can do nothing else, then I can relax into the surrender of the moment, waiting for the time that is ripe to stab the dude. It's all very Zen.
The stabbing, very Zen.
The stabbing is very Zen. They all get better.
Yeah.
And so I guess that suggests to me that this kind of intentional action is always within a context of goals. In other words, to know what's appropriate or what works, what doesn't work, it seems I need to know where I'm headed, right? And which of course raises the nasty question of, you know, are my goals any good? You know, and where the hell these things come from, you know, and all that. But I mean, am I reading you correctly that these intentional actions are in the context of a goal-oriented action program, so to speak?
An intention is an intention. It's not necessarily, a goal has a termination to it. An intention moves on to the next process.
Okay.
That's the easiest way I know to describe it. And it's hard to describe in a lot of ways.
But it has a direction. You know,
it has a direction.
So we know if so you can sense whether you're veering off that direction or getting closer to it in a sense. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and you want your intentions to be as simple as possible. Simple in the sense of all superfluous stuff has been winnowed away from it. It's like Judd says, the truth is that which cannot be simpler. And the best intentions are the ones that cannot be simpler. So when I fence, my intention is literally, I hit you. You know, with a thrust, with a cut, doesn't matter. It's just, I hit you. That's as simple as I can get. And for those that are going, what about if they hit you first? Part of I hit you is to interpose my sword in such a way that you can't hit me, but you give me an opening so that I can hit you. So what if you apply that to something else? Fencing is easy because it just is. What can I say?
Okay, for those of us who aren't necessarily living through the metaphor of fencing.
But why not? Now let's take the metaphor of rug merchanting. Zainab, what is the intention of a rug merchant that you cannot make simpler?
Sell the rug.
Sell the rug.
yeah.
Yeah, sell the carpet. It could be sell the perfect carpet. But at the base, it's sell the carpet. Jonathan, what is an intention in your life that you cannot make simpler?
To silence my chatter in my head when I'm trying to do an exercise of
See,
waking
already
up.
you've just made it too complex.
Hmm.
Stop
to-
it. Silence in the chatter of my head.
to-
Stop there.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, if you do that, then you don't have to worry about all of this other stuff.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes. So an intention does not need a sentence of words. It is a desire.
Yes. It does not need 12 different conditions. Sydney, you can type for us if you can't talk, but can you think of an intention that you can make that cannot be made simpler?
Or you can talk, whichever is easiest.
Yeah.
Okay, gonna have to think on that one. Go for it.
Okay.
Take a little time.
Take all the time you want. God, my color correction is going
Oh my
crazy.
God.
Yeah, me. What's going on with that?
You're looking a bit like a red devil.
Yeah, I was just thinking like the devil went right over there. All right.
Yeah.
Devil went down to East Palo Alto. Looking to sell some shrooms. I don't know. That's what we do around here, I guess, since we have Oakland across the way.
Yeah. Well,
Technically.
Oakland, it's legal, but here is
Not
actually
so
where
much.
you get all the people who want to use it. I mean, you got 90% of all of the techies are, microdosing daily.
Yep.
Oakland was just smart enough to go, oh, we don't need to throw people in jail for this.
Yeah,
I got to stick up for Oakland.
that's right.
Yeah. Represent.
All right. So, Nancy, what's an intention that you couldn't make any simpler?
To make dinner.
I like that. That works.
Yes. Feed yourself.
Yeah. Satiate hunger. Levita, how about you?
I think I missed the point because all I could come up with was to keep living.
Oh, that works. That's a great intention.
Yeah. All right. So Sydney offers, right now, my most pertinent intention is to, quote, do the schoolwork, unquote.
Yeah, that's pretty much, you can't make that very much simpler. Can you refine that, Noor?
Do the schoolwork. I don't know. Nope.
That works for me.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it would be a specific thing, like do that paper, you know, or even break it down even smaller than that. But anyway, Ilmar, you got one?
Oh, I suppose one for me these days is maintain a healthy body.
Yeah.
There are a lot of other ones also, but that's top of mind currently.
Yep.
And Sydney asks, is the intention of the breath practice to breathe? Yeah, pretty much. That pretty much is it.
Mustaqim, are you able to give us an intention you couldn't make any simpler in your own life? It's tough with that time change. We were so spoiled when we had you home working. But now you gotta go to the office. All right, so we will let you get to that, Mr. Key. I think mine is something like pain management, I guess.
Yeah, see, I would turn that around and go, comfort,
Yeah,
comfortable body.
that I like that. Yeah, that was the way I initially phrased it, and then I got distracted, but I like that better. Yep. Yeah. Yep, so that's my goal, and having it framed in these simple ways, like knowing, okay, I have control over taking action in the sense that I can go for walks to the degree that my body will be on board with going for walks. I can take action on that. I like that surrender is simple. I just have to think my body is unique in certain ways, and that's okay. Like, I have to be in dialogue with it. But when I understand that I know where that line is between what's in my hands and what's just there for me to accept, that makes it easier for me to just have clarity about my responsibility in that. Or even with the, a Sunday talk. I think Mishtak and I were joking yesterday because I was trying to figure out what we were going to call this thing, and it was getting me a little antsy. And he just said something, well, like, doing the talk is a intention to action category item for you. And suddenly it became so much easier for me to do because I didn't have to get caught up in thinking about all the emotions of, my comfort around doing Sunday talks and all that stuff, or like trying to think of ideas and surrendering to those emotions and ideas or whatever. It was just like, no, we just need to do it. It just needs to be done. And suddenly it was very simple.
Simple and cannot be simpler.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I could be the devil. Jeez. Time to color correct this thing again.
Yeah.
You keep talking.
Yeah, I don't really have much else to add.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those talks that is not for the masses. This is not a sexy talk. Yeah, this talk is probably going to get 40, 50 views. And that's okay, because this is for those 40 or 50 people. This is not for the hundreds of thousands of people who watch our big hit videos. Usually That happens when you talk about sex. I've noticed that. We
And
have
like
the
mystical, magical things. They like that
mystical
shit
magic.
too.
Yeah, they like that shit too. But nobody likes the nuts and bolts. And this is nuts and bolts. This is the sort of thing, if you get this down, and by the way, usually when we language this thing between ourselves, we talk about type A and type B intention.
Yeah, that actually makes it super simple for me personally. He was
Yeah.
like, this is a type A. This is a category A matter, i.e., getting a Sunday talk done. And suddenly it was like, okay, I can deal with that. It just needs to be done. I don't have to emotionally engage with it so much like I might have to with a category B issue. So perhaps that framing might be easier to utilize in day-to-day terms.
Yeah, it is the most non-mystical language we could come up with.
You want to explain what this category B thing is?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
just like A is the intention to action. B is the intention to surrender. So action, surrender, which is it? Is it A or B? That's what I mean.
Yeah. And it doesn't have the cool language. I mean, we could call it Alif and Be.
We wanted to be super like,
Yeah, super Sufi use the Arabic names for the letters, but it's A and B.
yeah.
Yeah. 1 and
Yep.
2. Black and white.
All right. So Sydney has a question. Can
Yes.
humans do two intentions of action at the same time, multitasking?
Yes and no. Humans do not multitask well. We are not built for multitasking. And all of the science says this. This is not anything but brain science by the best brain scientists out there. You don't multitask. You switch back and forth between tasks,
Yeah,
sometimes
so
very quickly.
even in that example, I was saying, like, let's say you have processes going where you have work responsibilities, you have family responsibilities, you have school responsibilities. You most likely can't literally work on those activities at the very same exact time. This is kind
Yeah.
of, you're switching between things.
Yes. And that being said, yes, in the same time frame, you can work on two different intentions, but you're going to work on them sequentially, not simultaneously.
Yeah.
I have never met anybody who can do two simultaneous thoughts at the same time. And I've tried myself. I've tried to do, the best I could come up with is visualizing numbers while singing a song that has nothing to do with the numbers. You can do little things like that, but that's not true multitasking. Try doing equations in your head while singing a song.
Yeah.
That would impress the shit out of me.
You're likely to get more done if you allow yourself to give your full attention to one thing at a time. Even
Yes.
if you end up giving your attention fully to one thing at a time sequentially.
And if you're wondering where the science is for this, there's a great book out called Brain Rules by a Dr. Molina, who I think is at Princeton. Don't take me for my word on that, but I think it's John Molina. Brilliant neuroscientist. And he's got really great rules for how the brain works and how you can do to optimize it. I love his rules. His first rule, at least when I read the book, he may have changed it by now, is exercise makes you smarter. And he gives you the science for this. And he will give you all of the facts about things like multitasking so that you don't think that I'm just being mean and saying you can't do it. And you've always known you can do it.
So there we go. Do we get any other questions? Because you guys have had some really good ones. Thank you. for
Yeah,
those.
you've had brilliant questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So knowing when to do what intention, you said to look for signs. Can you just maybe clarify that a little bit? What might the signs look like?
Take a stab at this one, Mushtaq, if you would.
Okay, so I need to repair my bicycle. I take it down off the rack after a long winter and I dust it off and I start oiling the chain. And as I'm turning the rear wheel, I hear a little grinding in the rear hub and I realize that I have to replace the rear bearings. So I do everything that I can do at that time to get my bike all tuned up and back into place. And I send off for a set of rear bearings for it. Then I peacefully wait. Not going to the window every 10 minutes going, when is that truck going to get here? But just allowing it to be. That's a simple example. But you need to like level up from that example to more complex stuff. Do what you can do. You'll know when you can't, when you've come to the end of your doing, because there won't be anything else you can do. You could go back and do it all again. Some people like to do that.
You could ruminate over everything you've already done.
Yeah. Or you could just wait until the situation has arrived where you can finish the job. Is that useful?
Yeah, it was really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Okay, Omar says he needs to check out shortly. Yeah, why don't we, shall we wrap it up?
We should wrap it up unless
Yeah.
there are any last questions. That covered it for the day.
Yeah.
So let me quick shift over to Brady Bunch mode. Boom. And everybody can wave goodbye.
Bye. Bye, YouTube.